and I didn't anticipate at the time that this shiur that we set up a couple of months ago would be here, but luckily due to modern technology, that's no problem. And it's a pleasure for me to be with you once again, and I admire greatly this whole initiative of the Sephardic Bet Midrash, which strangely, due to the COVID-19, is possible to have a worldwide audience, and everybody takes it very naturally. Oh, sure, yes, we have people from all over the globe. And soon I'm going to start screen sharing with you, but I'll just say a couple of words that the person who's one section of one of his works we're going to be reading together this evening, Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazan, was born in Izmir in 1808 and passed away in between Beirut and Jerusalem in 1863, was a very unusual person who combined tremendous erudition with great boldness and innovation in thinking. And he wrote works in quite a few genres of Judaic studies and served as a rabbi in various communities, the last one being Alexandria in Egypt, before that Corfu, before that Rome. He was the chief rabbi of Rome in the 1840s. And in this work that we're about to read, it's in the tradition of the dialogue, which everybody, or many people may know from the Platonic tradition. And we also, a great work from medieval times is Rabbi Yehuda Levi's Kuzari, which is written as a dialogue. And one of the interesting things about dialogue is that usually it's set up so that we know which of the parties involved is representing the voice of the author, right? So in the Kuzari, the Chacham, the Chaver, is representing the voice of Rabbi Yehuda Levi, and the king is sort of like a foil, asking questions that the Chaver is supposed to answer, and when from the answer of the Chaver, we know what the right Jewish position is. In this work by Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazan, She'erit HaNachala, which is apparently a fragment of a much larger work that is lost to us, there are two sides to this dialogue. One is a group of two rabbis, a pair of two rabbis from Jerusalem who come to Europe to raise funds for the Sephardic community in Jerusalem in mid-19th century. And on the other hand, we have a wealthy but very learned business person, Jewish business person from the town of Livorno in Italy. And I was teaching this once, and I think it was Yosef Hanker, Professor Yosef Hanker, who said to me that in a certain sense, this can be seen as a conversation between two wings of the Sephardic community, the Western Sephardic and the Oriental Sephardic, who many people now tend to think of all the Sephardim as one great global group, but historically, there were for various reasons differences between those who their main experience after Spain was in other countries of Christian Europe, especially Western Europe, and those Sephardim who went to Islamic countries. And we'll be seeing a part of this interesting relationship in this text. So without further ado, I will share the screening with you. It said host disabled participant screen sharing. So now, Sina, you're the host and you disabled me.
Chas v'shalom. Let me get that sorted. And if I do that, let me see if I can do it through here.
All right, keep trying.
Sorry about this. Trying to see how I can do it.
Didn't realize when you said that I should make you the host that this would be the result.
Let me see how I can change it. And sorry about this. I doesn't seem to give me the option.
Maybe it's in the others one.
Yeah. Let me see here. No, it doesn't let me on here. I'm gonna try and sort it out now. If you want to begin, and then I'm going to, as soon as it's done.
Maybe you can make the speaker the host again, and he can then share.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. It doesn't seem to bring it up. No, that's strange. Usually it comes up.
A couple of moments ago, it worked fine.
Yeah, it did. Let me see. Sorry about this, everybody. Nope. Avi, if you want to put the source sheet into the chat, and then as soon as I get it going, I'll let you know, Professor, and you can share the screen if that's okay. I'm just going to.
Are you able to share the screen, maybe, or Sina?
Yes, I could share the screen.
It's not ideal, but
yeah, just until I set, then I won't be able to set it up. I think it's better if you're able to continue and then I'll set it up, because then I won't be able to actually set it up to make you the host, and I need to try and do that first.
Well, I have the printed version, which I can read from.
Just in the meantime, while I sort this out.
Okay, so we have actually, we're coming in the middle of a discussion, and in this discussion, the local wealthy individual called Hasocher, the merchant, has just overheard the two rabbis from Jerusalem discussing some point between them in the language that they speak at home, which is Arabic. And he says to them, Rabotai, ad matai tiddakeuni bileshonchem ha'aravi. It's really depressing for me to hear you speaking this Arabic language. Ad matai tema'anu ledaber divrechem berurim kasimla lifnei kol mevin. Why don't you speak in some clear language that other people can understand? Ha'avodah. I mean, by the temple service. הבאתם את רוחי בין שיני בצפצוף שפת לשון הנוכרי הלזה זה שלוש רגלים. This is the third time you're speaking to me in this revolting language. קצתי בחיי, I can't stand it. מהקשיב לשון המביאה את האדם לידי חרישות אוזניים. It really makes me deaf from listening to this language. משמוע ריבוי נחירות הגרון במוצאכם אותה, the way you speak it in this guttural, throaty way of speech. ובפרט באותיות א', ה', ח', עין, הנשמעות לאוזנינו להבדיל כקרקור צפרדעים באגם מים. Okay, it sounds to me like you're croaking frogs in a swamp because of these guttural letters. Now, as you may know, Western Sephardim, okay, if you, I came to services in Western Sephardic in Italy and in Amsterdam, they say, they don't say ayin, they say lang, something with like an NG sound, all right? Gutturals aren't there. And especially the Socher says, Rambam himself called this a messed up language. Now, the Chachamim, obviously, this person is speaking from a very European 19th century perception of Arabic as a sort of primitive, revolting, and unattractive language. And the Chachamim reply, Nishba'anu.
Sorry, Professor, I think you should be able to do it now. Sorry, if you want to check.
All right, let's try now. Yes, I can. All right. Okay, just a minute. And I will put this here and move myself up. Right. And now you see here, right? Hachachamim, right? Line 10. נשבענו כי לא עת האסף עתה לדבר במהות המוצאות העבריות והערביות מהן. And now is not really the time to go into a deep discussion about the way of pronunciation of the Hebrew language and the Arabic language. והיה ראוי מן הדין, what we really should do properly, להשתדל שמלמדי התינוקות שבכל חלקי הכדור הישראלי, we should really try as much as possible that all teachers who teach young children throughout the Jewish world, יהיו מהשוכנים בארצות הערביים. We should really get Hebrew to be taught in all schools to all Jewish children around the world by people who are native to lands where the language spoken is Arabic. כדי להשריש מוצאות העברי בפי נערי בני ישראל, to get proper pronunciation inculcated into the younger generation. מה שעינינו רואות וחלות היום הזה, conversely what we see today, שגם בארצות המזרח התחילו להשתמש ממלמדים אירופיים כלים ריקים, instead of the Oriental Jews coming and teaching the Western Jews how really to speak Hebrew properly, with Aleph, Hayat, He'ain, and everything. Instead, we see the opposite. European Jews are establishing Jewish schools, like the Alliance, etc., in Islamic countries, and teaching the children there who naturally have Aleph, He, Het, Ain, and all the other Sad, Da, and so on. They have it all, and the European Jewish teachers are ruining it. והן בעוון כבר השחיתו המוצאות בפי עוללים ויונקים ואין בידינו להושיע. We can't help against this situation. כי אם שר עלמא בידי אנשים טיפשים בערים ועיקשים, because the world has been given over to foolish, dumb idiots. הרוצים להידמות לעורבים והטלפים, they're like creatures of the night. והינם זועפים, and they are scholars. It's topsy-turvy that the Jews from Europe think that they're going to teach the Jews from Islamic countries how to properly study Hebrew. But let's now really get on from pronunciation to Arabic language. We really can't stop speaking. We really have to point out to you, we have to wake you up. You are in deep sleep and slumber. You don't realize what reality is like. We're going to call out with a great voice, Hakitza, wake up. The Arabic language is a wonderful language and exceedingly pure and clear. ומפליאה במליצותיה, וממולאת בתרשיש שוהם ויוספה, מכמה מילות נחמדות, מדובר בם נחמדות, the wording, the phrases, the turn of speech that the Arabic language provides to somebody that really knows Arabic well is wonderful. וגם עוזרת ונותנת יד אל המליץ לדבר בכל צורכו. Any rhetorician can speak Arabic and convey the message with the best possible sense. ואם רעיוני המליץ ירבו כגלי ימה של אוקיינוס, even if the thoughts of the person speaking become full and vibrant and motion as the waves of the ocean. Ya'alu shamayim yeredu tehomot. They go up, they go down. Hi halashon hatzacha v'mli'ah v'gedusha hazot. This wonderful language. Ola im hamelitz berosh galei rayonav, goes up to the crest of the waves of the ideas of the speaker. And it comes and goes wherever your mind takes you. You could say it in Arabic much more successfully than in any other language. This is a biblical turn of phrase, meaning from that it does anything that you wish. To bring out your thoughts from the potential to the actual, and to bring it home safely to the safe haven of the writing. Even a drop of thought is not lost when trying to express it in Arabic. Okay, one of the tenets or the ideas of this move here is to say that how do we know that a language is a great language? That anything that somebody could think of, they can express successfully in a way that's fully consonant with their thoughts that they wanted to express, and they're not at loss for a way to express their thoughts. Anything that you think, you can put out, spread out on the paper, on the notebook. The more you know literary Arabic, of course, the greater and more wonderful are your possibilities of expression. So now they're moving on from how the language should be vocalized to the power of the language to bring across ideas with the greatest clarity and expressiveness. Okay, just a minute. No, I went down. I should be moving sideways. Just a minute. Okay, you have to go to the other half of this page and go back to the top. However, the Zohar doesn't buy into this. He says, that's fantastic. That's unbelievable. In fact, it's incredible. In really, you can't give it any graduality. This is a pasuk from Eov. Can a swamp spring up? Can bulrushes spring up without a swamp? Can a marsh be formed without water? Can. Similarly, an Oriental person like yourselves can't speak without just simply exaggerating, and the words carry his mind away. It's an innate feature of the Oriental nature. You can't even say the most simple thing without being carried away by tremendous exaggeration. And now, to give an example of this, the Socher, the merchant from Livorno, says, I saw in a book by one of the Ishmaelite, being the Muslims, that he exaggerated to say, the righteous, when they reach heaven, cannot really have pleasure in discussing one another with each other. The Arabic language is going to be the only vehicle for bringing pleasure to the souls of the righteous in Gan Eden. Can we believe such a thing about such an distorted and disturbed language? Now we see, by the way, here that this Zohar, this merchant, is not so limited as many people might suppose today of some merchants, because here he has been reading a book written by a Muslim scholar who wrote this thing about the greatness and the power of Arabic. But the Chachamim from Jerusalem, who are quite Chachamim, and they'll say, you think that this is a counterproof against us, what you read in this book by this Muslim scholar about the pleasure in Gan Eden of discourse in literary Arabic? Gam anu nomar al ha'Evropim bichlal, will say the same thing. You made a generalization about the Orientals, right? That they can't speak without exaggeration. Now let's us tell you something about the Europeans. נאמר על האירופים בכלל מה שהוא אמת ויציב שכל כך התעבד דמיונם במעבה החומר הגולמי. Their mind is frozen in the murk of anti-spirituality. עד שלא ידעו להבדיל באמונותיהם, they even can't differentiate in their beliefs בין החי ובין המת. They can't know who's alive and who's dead. Now this is a reference, since this fellow, the Socher from Livorno, brought in the Ishmaeli, the Muslims, they're bringing in the Christians. They say the Christians are so bunk-headed, they can't tell in the difference between somebody who's dead and alive. Jesus, he died. You're saying he's alive. I mean, that's really incredible. Similarly, they can't make a differentiation in their argumentation, everything, they can't tell the difference in our term between what's true and what's fake. והישראלים שכניהם למדו הרבה מדרכם להשתקע בם טבעיהם ומזגיהם. Okay, of course, the European Jews always say, like when France conquered Algeria, right, in 1830, and the Jews in France who had just received French citizenship at the time of the French Revolution, and were going out of the way to show how Jews are such Western educated, like French by nature. Now they come to Algeria, they see all of these Jews wearing galabiot, speaking Arabic, looking Arabic. So what did the French Jews say? Well, they said, no, the Muslims are really backward. The Jews innately are wonderful, but because of their association with the Muslims, it rubbed off on them. What could they do? We'll make them into Western Frenchmen if you'll only give them French citizenship. Now here, the Chachamim from Jerusalem are doing exactly the opposite to the European Jews, and they said, it's not your fault. You don't have much understanding of what's true and false because you're living among the Christians who can't tell between dead and alive. But הישראלים שכניהם למדו הרבה מדרכם, okay, הרי מופת ברור לפנינו. We're talking clearly, כי מה לאמונות המתעללים באלילים לידיעות ברורות בפי העונקים ויונקים, who are the מתעללים באלילים? Christians. Muslims know much better than the Christians. אנו אומרים דברים ברורים לעיני השמש והירח ושיש בהם מן החוכמה הרמה. We're bringing you clear proofs and you are giving us foolish retorts, making foolish and sarcastic discreditation of what we say. Rav lecha hasocher, I'm jumping a couple of lines. Rav lecha hasocher, enough. Kalach miderech zu re'eh be'ainecha. Think about it again, and you realize, adrabah, the opposite is true. ממקום שבאת היא ראיה מופתית לכל דברנו. The exact quote that you brought about what is the Muslim belief about the afterlife, where everybody will have such pleasure from the Arabic language, that exactly proves our point. Why? כאילו לא הייתה הלשון הערבי יפה וברורה ורמה ונשגבה. If the Arabic language in this world was not lovely, clear, of great quality, ותענוג מופלג, and a great pleasure ממנה, from it, לשומע ולמדבר, for anyone involved in discourse, it brings such intense pleasure, the literary Arabic. If this were not the case, לא היה יכולת, it would have been impossible, לבודי אמונת הישמעאלים, the person that invented the Muslim belief, meaning Muhammad, לייסד גם אמונה זאת שאמרת שבאמת כן היא אמונתם עד היום הזה. Okay, if somebody wants to tell us something about the pleasures of Gan Eden, right? Now, nobody I ever know has really been in Gan Eden. We're still waiting for communication from that quarter. Perhaps it's quantum mechanics, who knows? But so when people talk about the pleasures of Gan Eden, what do? They take certain things which are very pleasurable in this world and which they believe are appropriate for the world to come, and they project it from their experience in this life onto the afterlife. That's how we know about what is good and what's not good and what's going to be very attractive in Gan Eden, because we project onto it our experiences from this world. Therefore, when people say, as he says, the hadith says that Muhammad really did, that in the future, the tzaddikim in Gan Eden, the Muslim tzaddikim, will get great pleasure from discourse in Arabic. What does this show? That in this life, people really get great pleasure from it, right? Okay, sof davar. Finally, let's close this argument. נשאג מנהמת ליבנו ונאמר כי מי ייתן והיה אבותינו הקדמונים יושבי המזרח. Would it have been that our fathers, our forefathers living here in Oriental countries, השתדלו ללמד את בני יהודה הלשון הזאת על בוריה? We're very sad that in fact, knowing what we know about the great merits of Arabic, we Jews of the East don't have sufficient command of Arabic, literary Arabic, as we should. Now, in parentheses, I'll mention that, as you probably know, spoken Arabic and literary Arabic are more or less as similar as Portuguese and Latin. Okay, and there's many different dialects of Arabic, but this literary Arabic, Fusha, is a language that every Arabic-speaking child has to learn anew when they begin school. And many of them, like many people studying Hebrew or Aramaic, they really never get it to the level of achievement to express themselves in it. But that's a problem of the teaching, okay? We know Arabic very poorly, only to speak. Actually, in Oriental countries, לשונות אחרות למה? או לשון הקודש או ערבית וטורקית. What do we need? People coming from Europe to teach us French. We're living in the Orient. We should know well and be taught well the literary high-level languages of the countries we're living, which is Arabic and Turkish. They will be the mother tongues for us. We really don't need people that want other languages, right? English, Italian, French. We should really be doing solid, high-level literary Arabic and Turkish. והרמב"ם, אז שאמרת שתיאר לשון הערבי, לשון משובשת, טעית, it's a big mistake. Rambam said that Arabic is Lashon HaKodesh Meshubeshet. It's a variant of Hebrew. Adraba, Ma'ala Gedola Natan La, Ya'an Shekol HaLeshonotim Shibush Lashon HaKodesh, right? Everything began from the holy tongue of Hebrew. How do we know? Look at Sefer Bereshit. In what language did God create the world? And all other languages are the generations of the original holy language. Aval kol had, every one of the languages, the more distant countries and language came from Eretz Yisrael, the lower and lower the language sank. Ad kidei fshita me'aleha, and some languages, there are almost no connection at all to the original Hebrew. Okay. Okay. הערבי להיותה קרובה אל מקורה, עמד טעם לשון הקודש בה וצורתה ותבניתה ולכנו נאמר. Arabic, of all languages, is the closest to the original Hebrew, and therefore it has much higher qualities than any other language. Okay, and in some places it says, well, you know what the reason for this is? The reason is that Ishmael grew up in the home of Abraham Avinu. So there was good influence upon the Ishmaelites, much more the other pagan peoples of the world. And then they bring a proof, which now is going to move us into the next section. מלאנו להעריך עוד בשבח הלשון הנמרצת הזאת, אחרי כי הגאונים התירו ללמד תינוקות של בית רבן ובית הכנסת, כתב בלשון ערבי עם לימוד התורה. In fact, if you want us to demonstrate a proof that Arabic is so wonderful, the Geonim, from the Geonic period, right, between the 7th and the 12th centuries, התירו ללמד תינוקות של בית רבן, they permitted young children in elementary school, Jewish elementary school, בבית הכנסת, while sitting and studying in the synagogue, כתב ולשון ערבי, how to write and understand literary Arabic, עם לימוד התורה. The Geonim permitted to integrate Arabic with Torah studies in the Bet Knesset itself. Now the Zohar says, he can't believe it. He says, I can't believe it. I don't even want to hear such things about the Geonim, that they would even cross their mind to permit such a thing. And by you, the scholars of Jerusalem, advancing such nonsense, you are going to undermine the respect and confidence that the Jews of the diaspora have for the rabbis of Jerusalem. But this is here, that's what I did. And now we'll move on. The rabbis don't stop. They say not only did the Geonim permit Arabic to be studied in the Bet Knesset together with Torah studies, the Geonim also Odo Sifu added to this, lehatir lelamed yaldei goyim in yardei ha'ivrim sham bevet ha'knesset. The Geonim permitted that if non-Jewish parents wanted children to attend the Jewish school and to study together with the Jewish children, apparently some parents at that time recognized the high quality of the studies in the Jewish school, the Geonim said you can allow non-Jewish children to attend a Jewish school in which Torah and Arabic language are studied together. Now the Zohar can't believe this, and he says, he says, I don't know this source, but you have to show me. Who of the Rishonim cited this? As far as I understand, it's never been printed. Because if it would have been printed, Rabbi Yosef Karo would have cited this permission to study Arabic together with Torah in the Bet Knesset, in Shulchan Aruch, or Moshe Islis would write this, or Ahonim Alehem. And now the Chachamim say, and I'll summarize it, they say it's true. This is a quotation that has never been printed, and this quotation we can bring to you because our good friend, Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazan of Alexandria, when he came to be rabbi in Alexandria in 1858, went to Cairo to visit his friend, who was Eliyahu Yisrael, was at that time rabbi in Cairo. And while Yisrael Moshe Hazan was there, he found in a Genizah this tshuva of the Geonim, together with a whole section of the ancient book called Sefer Ha'itim. And all of this you can read about, they say, in the book of Tshuvot HaGeonim, the annotated book, Iyeh Hayam Teshuvot HaGeonim, that are now going to print, which is in fact a book that the author himself of Shelit HaNachala, Moshe Hazan, wrote and edited an annotated version of Teshuvot HaGeonim, in which he brings this citation. And in this case, we see that he cites this quote, Mishmei de Rav Hai Gaon Zal Itmar. This is from a Geniza fragment of Sefer Ha'itim discovered by Yisrael Moshe Hazan. Rav Hai Gaon wrote the following teshuvah. Mutar lelamed tinokot shel bet haKnesset agav limud haTorah ketav ha'aravi v'cheshbonot. When teaching Torah to young children in the Bet Knesset, you can teach alongside of that ketav ha'aravi, Arabic writing, and arithmetic, cheshbonot. Aval shelo im haTorah, but to separate these topics, eno nachon. In other words, you have to integrate Torah study with general studies, the same place on the same institution, not separate. Okay, and what about allowing non-Jewish children to study there in Bet HaKnesset, the same curriculum? If we can somehow resist the wishes and the pressure from the non-Jewish parents to allow their children to attend, well, let's try to do that. But if we think that this might make the non-Jewish parents angry at us, or unhappy with ein dochim mipnei darkei shalom. Okay, so they say this, what do you see? That the Geonim allowed to study Arabic in the Bet Knesset together with Torah. They even allowed non-Jewish children to study there if not doing so would disturb the peace with the non-Jewish parents. The Zohar says, well, now his mind immediately jumps ahead to an issue which was on the agenda of the Jewish community in Europe and the world at that time, which is having a Jewish school in which the curriculum would integrate general, I'm not saying secular, but general studies together with Torah studies. And this was a big issue in Europe. And he says, well, now that we know that the Geonim permitted this, it's now permitted to study general topics in a Jewish school, languages and sciences in the proper conditions are permitted to be studied in Jewish schools. Now, at this point, the Chachamim, who until now have been defending Arabic and coming and saying, well, Arabic is wonderful. And here's proof that Rav Hai Gaon permitted to study Arabic in a Jewish school together with Torah studies at the same time. Now the Chachamim get cold feet from this analogy. And they say, just a minute. Lo tuchal להכחיש ידידנו הסופר, you can't deny. ההפרש הגדול שבלימוד לשון וכתב ערבי לשאר לשונות בנייפת שבדורנו זה. Arabic is not the same as European languages in our modern times. כגון, like Tsarfati, French, Ashkenazi, German, Italki. Because when we look at the works written in Arabic, they're all very religious, Muslim, belief in God and everything. So what could go wrong by learning Arabic, he says. But modern languages, the books today are ממולאים בכמה דברים רעים ומרים, bad and bitter things are found in works of modern European languages. So we are in favor of Arabic, but you can't jump from that by analogy to other languages. However, the socher, the merchant from Livorno, it turns out to be also a buff, very interested in the history of culture. And he says, your attempt to differentiate between Arabic in the 19th century and French, German, Italian in the 19th century, that's a mistake. You have to think about Arabic in the 10th and 11th centuries vis-a-vis modern languages in the 19th century. Misha, and then you won't be able to make this differentiation. Misha, עלה בדעתו לתת הפרש כזה, חוץ מכולכם, begging your pardon, ידע נאמנה שיראוהו, כאילו מעיד על עצמו כי בער הוא. By making an analogy between what's today in Arabic countries and what the Geonim are talking about shows that you are an ignoramus. ולא ידע מקורות חוכמת היוונים עד כדי טיפת דיו כחרדל ולא בדרך מלך. You don't even understand how the wisdom of ancient times came to us. מי היו הנפקדים הנאמנים לכללות חוכמת היוונים? Who kept the flame of human culture and knowledge alive? מי היו שומרי חומות המלאכות הדקות והחוכמות הרמות? בזמן הנקרא אצל כותבי הדורות, מדי יואב. Who were the people in the Western world who kept alive the flame of knowledge of the sophisticated sciences and various crafts, and who did that in medieval times? מי הוציאו הוצאות גדולות ומפליאות לעתיק כל חוכמת היוונים מלשונם מלא הערביים? Who went to tremendous expense to translate all of the heritage of ancient Greece and Rome? The Arabs did it. הם היו לכלל לחוכמות הידיעות וההיסטוריות כל מלאכת מחשבת השומרים הנאמנים. In medieval times, the center of knowledge of Western culture was in Arabic lands. And then it began to be, in the end of medieval times, retranslated back from Arabic into Latin by Jews and Arabs in southern Italy. Everything that you see today, European books, just a minute. Right? You see today European books. Is where, how do we have Western, ancient Greek and Roman knowledge in Europe today by virtue of the Arabs. Thinking back to medieval times, when Rabbeinu Hai Gaon said that Jewish children could study Arabic, okay, when I was studying in a school in Israel, okay, we had general history and Jewish history. It was two different topics. And only at a certain later time in my life, I realized that Kufat Geonim and the early medieval period, it's really the same thing. Rishonim is the second half of the medieval times, the early modern. Okay, but it's just all conflated when you separate Jewish, and he knows the difference. בזמן המדיאבל, היו כל האירופים כולם בערים ולא מבינים, all the Europeans in medieval time were backward ignoramuses, דייגים ויעריים להפליא, fishermen, living in the forests, כל חוכמה וכל אפיקורסות וכל מיתולוגיה, all wisdom and אפיקורסות and mythology, and like in Sifrei HaSaba, where the Rambam knows about how the pagans worship. היו כולם מועתקים וערבי. This is all in Arabic. And we see that in the time of Rav Saadia Gaon and so on, what was the source of the impetus for Jewish philosophy in medieval times to be able to respond in kind to claims made against the tradition by very knowledgeable people. That was the source of Jewish philosophy, Rav Saadia Gaon, Rambam, and so on. Okay? ואם הילד היה יודע הערבי על מתכונתו, think back to the year 1000, when Rav Hai Gaon said that the children could study these languages. הרי, if he knew Arabic, הרי לפנינו נער מלא כרימון, full as a pomegranate, בידיעות philosophic. By this he could access philosophy and all different wisdom and studies of all different peoples, apikorsu, mythology, sabayot, meaning pagan books, histories, ad le'en ketz, כי בו בפרק כאשר אמרנו, because at that time, הלשון הערבי אשר הייתה אם לכל מין חוכמה וידיעה, טובה עם רעה, כמו שהוא היום לשון אשכנזי המחודשת והמתוקנת. So therefore, when you talk about whether we can or cannot derive from Rav Hai's permission to study Arabic and make that point vis-a-vis studying modern languages and cultures, 100% we can make that analogy, because in those times, Arabic was at the forefront and source to acquaintance with entire cultures, many of which were completely inimical to Judaism. And if Rav Hai Gaon permitted that, we today can wholeheartedly and should endorse the study of secular topics and languages and wisdoms by Jewish children together with Torah. Move down here. And he says that, in fact, there are some Jews today who try to shut out secular culture and ignore it and just continue with what they hold to be the way things were done before. But there are other Jewish scholars who come to grips with modern culture and respond to it on the basis of their general knowledge. And he says these people are much better than the ones who seek to just shut out the current knowledge. Okay, אחרי הודיע אלוהים אותנו את כל זאת, שרבנו Hai Gaon ז"ל התיר ללמד בני ישראל בפומבי. Rav Hai Gaon permitted to teach young Jewish children in complete openness, ובמקום המקודש עם לימודי התורה, in the holy place of the witness, together with Torah studies, הלשון הערבית. And we also know that the Arabic language was the gateway to cultures and ideas inimical to Judaism. באותם הדורות at that time, הלשון הזאת היא הייתה אם כל חי בכל מין ידיעה טובה מרעה, ועם כל זה, despite Arabic being an access to all of this, אפיקורסות לא חש רבנו גאון ז"ל להתיר ללמדה בני ישראל. He permitted Jewish children to learn that, מעתה, knowing this, אין לחכמי וגאוני ישראל בכל מקום שהם, scholars, rabbis around the Jewish world have no grounds להתנגד עוד אל נטיעת האסכולות, modern schools, בקרב בני ישראל. Okay? And therefore he says there's no justification and no reason, but it should be done in a proper educational context and making sure to integrate it together with Torah. And this should and will be the basis for Jewish studies from now on. Okay? And at the end he says, אסור להתחסד יותר מראשון הגונים במעלה. Don't try to be more fastidious, more religious, more frum than Rav Hai Gaon himself. All right, so I'll stop here with these words of Rabbi Moshe Hazan, and I will pause the share, and if anybody would like to ask questions, or if we have some time for that, so bevakasha.
Thank you, Professor. I was ready for you to keep going. I don't know about everyone else, but that was fantastic. One thing, a question I had just before we go to the audience and get some questions from them. Is there more background that we can have with regards to this book and with regards to Hacham Yisrael Moshe Hazan? I know you gave a bio of him at the beginning, but what was going on at the time, and why do you feel he felt the need to want to write this book?
Well,
what was he responding to?
Yisrael Moshe Hazan was born and brought up in the Middle East, and then he went to Europe, and he was very impressed. Remember, he came to Europe, I think, around 1840, and there was a lot of debate going on between various Jewish denominations, which hadn't been existing until the Jewish denominations is a new idea. I mean, at least since the Karaites, which was 1,000 years ago, I mean, and more, the notion that there was reform and this kind and that kind and the different Orthodox and this. So on the one hand, he was very against reform, but he was also very against what he called and knowing Italian, he got to know Italian very well. It was called fanatissimo, meaning fanaticism, which he attributed to a certain wing of the Orthodox. And he felt that he should represent the golden mean of which you can be within the tradition, but not reject knowledge and general studies and openness to the world. When he was in Italy, in Rome, he formed good relations with various high-ranking people in the Catholic Church. And hopefully in the spring, we'll be reading together Teshuvah of his about Hukot HaGoyim. Okay, the Torah says, "Lo ta'asu kechukotehem, ubechukotehem lo terech." You shouldn't follow the Hukot HaGoyim. And taken in a broad sense, this means rejection of all non-Jewish culture. And so, a sense which, as we'll see, he came out in a very interesting response against that. But so he was very involved in European Jewry and things going on there. And also you see that he was very involved in a different issue, which is the relations between the Western Sephardim and the Eastern Sephardim, and he felt for his experience that the Jews in the West, well, as you know, of course, this wasn't the case in the time of the Rambam or of Saadia Gaon, or the great rabbis in Spain in the 12th and 13th and 14th centuries. But at some time, the Jews in Europe adopted the European Orientalism view of the non-European cultures. And here we saw very clearly at the beginning how the Jew from Livorno is looking down on Arabic, the Muslim culture, the Jews who are speaking Arabic, affected by this backwardness. And in a certain sense, we have here the Jews of the East relating and taking this head on and saying, no, it's you got this wrong. You've been affected by the Christians, right? Now, a wonderful example, right? Imagine a Jewish belief among a group of Jewish people that a certain Jewish individual was the Messiah, but he died, but he's really still alive, and we still look up to him as our spiritual guide. Now, obviously, such an idea couldn't have taken place if people weren't living in a Christian world. The Jews in Europe have been certainly affected adversely by living in a Christian environment. And one of the things is that they look down, and so on, and the Jews, and we can't know. Now, what you see here is that Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazan is able to identify a different stage in the discussion with each side of the argument. Right? Should we be afraid of general studies? Should we not? Well, the Chachamim are in favor of Arabic, but they're wary of the possible influence of Western culture and so on. So it presents both sides of the argument, and it's a very high level literary Hebrew with many literary allusions. And in this sense, Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Hazan was trying to bring out the sides of this discussion in a lively way. And
it worked. And it worked.
Can I ask a question, sorry, on that analysis? Because there's a bit of an implication here which I feel uncomfortable with, because I'm picking up on the kind of Jewish fundamentalism or extremism that he's trying to stand against, and and that's clear that he wants to make the point that secular studies and science and philosophy are all things that that Rav Hagon was in favor of, but you didn't get. I mean, I don't get the impression that the Western or the Western Sephardi Jews were advocating kind of the fundamentalist view. Perhaps that was other parts of Europe. So perhaps I misunderstood. Was there a fundamentalist wing within the Western Sephardi community at that time that he was trying to kind of speak against, or was it more generally about European Jews and not just specifically the Western Sephardi community? That makes sense. I hope you understood my question.
Yes, I understand the question. So the first, and my answer is that I can't say that I have sufficiently studied the specific history of the various communities in Great Britain and elsewhere, and Italy, Amsterdam, and so on. But I don't know that the Jewish schools themselves were integrating high-level secular or general culture with Jewish studies. And I know that a lot of individual people were having their children taught by private teachers many important things about science and knowledge and languages and so on. But I think that this was more a matter of class, which also in medieval times, we find the merchants and international traders and so on teaching their children many things, which the basic cheder or tav or whatever did not include in those times. And at the same time, it is true that in general, Rabbi Moshe Hazan was relating not only to Western Sephardim, but to developments of, of Hadash Asur min HaTorah, what is new is forbidden by Torah, which were typical of other groups within European Orthodoxy at that time.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I know the Hacham is actually on a holiday retreat for his son's birthday.
No, it's okay.
So gonna look now in the chat. Let me see here. Those who would believe that don't generally have experience. Asaf, I don't know if you're still here. No, Asaf. Yeah, he is there. Asaf, do you want to elaborate on your question?
So one of the this was regarding the argument on that people in heaven want to speak in Arabic because it's such a great language, and the Chachamim are saying back, you see that only people who know the language that well, it shows that they have such emotional connection to the Arabic language. So my question was, but still that's not a good retort, because it fails to consider that perhaps it's not the Arabic language itself that is such a great language, but rather the fact that, smart people are able to communicate in the world to come. And the people who fall prey to that proof are people who generally only speak Arabic. And therefore they think that it's an inherent quality in Arabic when it might just be an inherent quality of high-level communication.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the question. In general, I believe that the main point that they were trying to make is that when speaking about Gan Eden, the world to come, and thinking of it as a very pleasurable place, what human beings do is try to project onto that future existence the most wonderful experiences that they have from this existence. All right, so we know that in certain cultures, Gan Eden is going to be full of wonderful sex. Now, for various reasons, because of the belief in the incorporeality of souls in the future world, and perhaps certain ideas that people in the Jewish tradition had about sex in certain times. So this is a feature of certain tradition, not the Jewish tradition, but the Jewish tradition does have a feast of Basar Leviathan and the tzaddikim enjoying like ambrosia and whatever, Afar Simon, Neharot Afar Simon. And also, what does it have? The people studying Torah together and deriving tremendous enjoyment from studying Torah, right, in whatever language, because it's the content of Torah and interaction which is going to be very present now. How do people know about that? People that enjoy studying Torah in this life made that story. All right, now, I once heard, I think it was from Moshe Halbertal, that he heard from his rabbi. He said, you know what? In Gan Eden, everybody is going to have Gemarot set out before them. For the people that love studying, I mean, in the afterlife, for people that love studying, that's going to be Gan Eden. For people that don't like studying, that's Gehenna, and it's the same place. So when the Islamic tradition or the Hadith says this about the world to come through the Islamic lens, okay, what they're saying is, you know well the wonderful, exquisite pleasures of discourse in the Arabic language on whatever, poetry, philosophy, theology, science. Just doing it in Arabic gives immense pleasure. How do we know that? Well, we do it here in this world. And by projecting, by the idea that this has been projected onto the world to come, say the Chachamim from Jerusalem, this tells you something about the experiences of these people in this world. Now, it could be that maybe there's some place, which I'm not aware of, that says, you know what? The most wonderful thing in Gan Eden is going to be everybody speaking literary English to each other. Okay, but I haven't heard about that yet. Maybe it exists in some description of Gan Eden in the UK. But what they're trying to say is that this description of Gan Eden doesn't tell something that's credible or incredible about Gan Eden. It tells you something about the real life experience that people who are adept in literary Arabic, how they feel and how they experience the pleasures of Arabic here in this world.
Thank you. Thank you. Avi, you've got a question?
Just a really quick question with regards to a little bit, if you can summarize the continuation of this dialogue that we're having. So how is there a conclusion that they arrived to, or is Rav Hazan like presenting both sides and you sort of have to, pick from what the Zohar is saying and what from the Chachamim are saying? For example, do they respond, the Chachamim, to what the merchant from Livorno is saying, or just?
Well, in this case, they respond, you can see it at the end of the text in Hebrew, they say, well, you know what? We see that your argument has merit, but our side of the argument that we're wary of the influence of these modern cultures also has merit, and God knows what's true. So they end in sort of like teku. But what we have actually in print, what I showed to you is not the entire work in print of She'erit HaNachala, which you can find on Hebrew books. But this She'erit HaNachala itself is according to the introduction in 1862, it was published. It was like a trailer promo for a much larger book of several thousand pages worth that ostensibly existed in manuscript, but that manuscript has never been found. But in general, his idea is to present you both sides of the argument, and you'll recognize that you've heard, or you might know people that have both sides, but he presented in an interesting way. It's not simply a dialogue, it also has elements of a theater. This one laughs, this one leaves the room because it's so repulsive to him. This one eats some food and he can't stand it. I mean, there's dramatic elements that you can imagine a script for a play based on these discussions.
Brilliant. On that note, Professor, I will thank you so much for that insight. The first time I actually got exposed to Hacham Yisrael Moshe Hazan was through Hacham Faur's book on him. And the introduction that Hacham Faur wrote in that book is very, very powerful. I sometimes tear up when I read it, so I won't read it now in public in front of everyone. But I think that intro, which I'm sure you know what I'm referring to, is something that we're hoping to sort out, a situation that we're hoping to help try and improve. Everybody, thank you so much, Professor Zohar. I really appreciate it. We can't wait to have you back. We would have you every week if we could. We know you're very busy. And please God, we'll see everyone again next week. Next week, I believe we've got Rav Dweck giving a shiur on the roots of the conflict within Hanukkah. It takes it back to the conflict between Yosef and Yehuda. And looking forward to seeing you all there. If you haven't got the journal yet, please do just put your email address in the chat box and I'll make sure we get it over to you. Professor Zohar, go and get a drink. I know it must be midnight, almost midnight. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.